Hi, I'm Mariska. My sister called me just the help at her wedding, and minutes later, the groom walked out. But that moment wasn't the start. It was the tipping point. I'd been erased quietly for years. My name left off the invitation, my seat assigned next to the kitchen, my apartment signed away without a word. They didn't scream. They didn't hit. They just smiled while they rewrote my life without me in it. How do you fight back when your family makes you feel like a footnote? And what happens when you stop being quiet? Early June in Charlotte always carried a sticky kind of quiet, the kind that settled on your skin before the sun fully rose, whispering that whatever came next wasn't going to be gentle. I was sitting at my kitchen table, the fan rattling above me, flipping through a stack of unopened mail when I found it. A thick, cream-colored envelope with silver script. My sister's wedding invitation. I turned it over in my hands, fingers lingering on the embossed crest our family used on holiday cards, Isoldas' latest branding invention. I opened it slowly, knowing exactly what I'd find, and somehow still surprised when I didn't see my name. The card read, "Isolda Montgomery and Calder Willis invite you to their celebration of love." And then, underneath, in a faint, italicized line, "Guest. Not Mariska, not even an guest. Just guest." I blinked at the paper like it would correct itself. I reread it 3 times, waiting for something to click. Maybe a separate envelope got misplaced. Maybe this was a preliminary draft. But it was sealed. It was signed. It was deliberate. The next moment, I was already calling my mother. She picked up with that exaggerated brightness she used when she didn't want to deal with reality. "Oh, honey, did you get the invite? Isn't the font gorgeous?" I cleared my throat. "There's no name, just guest. Was that on purpose?" There was a pause, just long enough to confirm what I already suspected. "Don't make everything about you, Mariska. It's a wedding, not a seating protest." I didn't answer right away. My knuckles whitened around the edges of the envelope. She kept talking, something about guest limits, the printer making a mistake, how Isolda was stressed enough without more drama. But I'd already stopped listening. When I hung up, I stared at the invitation like it had grown teeth. The next morning, I showed up early to the venue. That was my role after all. Quiet, dependable, capable. The support. The event was at a restored barn just outside town, all reclaimed wood and fairy lights strung over exposed beams. The kind of place that screamed rustic chic, but cost more than most people's yearly salaries. I helped the florist unload her van, nodded at the caterer like we'd been co-workers for years, which we basically had in passing. Then I wandered into the reception hall to find the seating chart. It was pinned neatly to a corkboard, hand-lettered by some Etsy artisan Isolda probably paid triple the going rate for. Names scrolled in looping cursive, each followed by a table number. I scanned the M section, then again, and then. Event support, Mariska. My breath caught. I leaned in closer, hoping I misread it. But there it was. Not bridesmaid, not sister of the bride. Just support, a worker. Leora, Isolde's lifelong shadow and part-time hype woman, appeared beside me like a ghost. "Oh, good, you found your spot," she chirped, sipping something pink and fizzy out of a stemless glass. "We figured you'd be more comfortable near the kitchen. You're always so hands-on with logistics." I didn't say anything, just nodded, like this made sense. Like being treated as an extra wasn't new. Because it wasn't. I'd played this role before, at school recitals where I wasn't on stage but behind it, handing out programs. At family holidays where Isolda made grand toasts and I made sure there were enough chairs. At every major moment in our lives, she got the spotlight. I got the extension cord. And the worst part? I'd accepted it. Even normalized it. I stopped questioning it because I thought, maybe that's just how families work. Maybe being useful was better than being adored. But as I stood there, the air thick with flower petals and expectation, something inside me finally settled into clarity. There was no mistake. They didn't forget to add my name. They didn't misprint the seating chart. They placed me exactly where they thought I belonged. out of the picture, out of the narrative. And always, always, within reach when they needed a hand. I pulled the seating chart down gently, folded the corner with my name creased through the middle, and slid it into my purse. I didn't make a scene. I didn't cry. Instead, I headed back to the storage room, where the vendors were sorting glassware and checking inventory. I picked up a clipboard and started checking the list. In my head, though, a new list was forming. I wasn't just going to carry boxes this time, I was going to carry the truth. 2 days after the seating chart incident, I stood inside the icy fluorescent glow of the bridal boutique on East Moorhead, the one Isolde insisted on using because it photographs better than any place in South Park. I didn't say much as I walked in. I'd learned by now that silence was my safest currency in these rooms. Leora spotted me first. She was leaning against the fitting room wall, sipping iced coffee and scrolling through her phone like her approval was the only thing keeping the building from collapsing. When she saw me, she gave that tight-lipped grin she'd perfected since high school and held out a garment bag. "This one's yours," she said, voice chirpy. "Straight from alterations." I unzipped the bag and stared at the fabric. The color was right, dusty mauve, the shade Isolde claimed would look romantic but not desperate on camera. But as I stepped into the fitting room and pulled it over my hips, the zipper caught halfway up my ribcage. I turned sideways, trying not to panic. This wasn't tight. It was 2 sizes too small. "Hey, Leora," I called, trying to sound casual. She pulled back the curtain like I'd invited her to tea. Her eyes flicked down to the bunched fabric around my waist. "Oh, maybe you put on some weight, sweetheart?" The seamstress, who'd just entered with a tray of pins, frowned. "This isn't her measurement, not even close." Leora shrugged. "Well, mistakes happen." "Do they?" I thought. "Or is it only a mistake when it happens once?" I didn't argue. Instead, I nodded, changed back into my own clothes, and asked the seamstress if there was enough time for a replacement. She hesitated, glanced at Leora, then said, "We'll try." I left without saying goodbye. The breeze outside hit my face like a verdict. I walked 2 blocks to clear my head before returning to the venue. It was flower delivery day, and I'd promised the coordinator I'd help carry arrangements from the loading dock. As I carried a box of white peonies toward the main hall, a man in a blazer and suede loafers, probably one of Calder's friends, stopped me. "Can I get a champagne refill?" he asked, holding up an empty flute. I blinked. "I'm not with catering." He gave an embarrassed laugh, then turned to someone behind him. "She's got the look of a good planner, doesn't she?" I kept walking, placing the flowers where they were supposed to go. Not humiliation, just a slow, dull confirmation. Another stranger seeing me not as a sister, not as a guest, but as part of the scenery. Functional. Replaceable. When people see you doing everything, they forget you're someone too. That evening, we had dinner at my mother's house. It was supposed to be casual, a family catch-up. I brought up the dress, not to accuse anyone, just to clarify. Mine didn't fit. It was 2 sizes too small. They must have pulled the wrong number. Vera barely looked up from her salad. "You've always been sensitive, Mariska. Isolda has a lot on her plate right now." Isolda didn't look up at all. She was tapping through her phone, like the conversation wasn't even happening. "You don't need recognition," Vera added, reaching for more bread. "You need to learn grace." That word again, grace. They threw it at me like it was a virtue, when really it was their way of saying, "Stay quiet." Later that night, back at my apartment, I sat on the floor with a cup of tea and started writing everything down. Not in a journal, not as therapy. As record. Documentation. A list. No name on the invitation. Seated with staff. Mislabeled dress. Mistaken identity. They were details. But when enough details accumulate, they stop being harmless. I remembered something I'd read once. The minute you settle for less than you deserve, you get even less. Maureen Dowd said that. I wasn't trying to stir up a rebellion, but I also wasn't going to pretend any longer that these were innocent oversights. They had placed me on the outskirts of my own family, then acted surprised when I noticed. It wasn't about exploding or calling them out in some grand scene. That's not who I was. But I was done being convenient. As I left the boutique earlier that day, after agreeing to a last-minute alteration that shouldn't have been necessary, I paused in the hallway. Leora was whispering something to Isolda. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. Isolda turned, met my eyes, and gave me a smirk. Cold, deliberate, knowing. She didn't look away, and neither did I. They don't think I'll do anything. That's their first mistake. The light in my apartment that morning wasn't different. Soft, pale, a little dusty from the blinds I kept forgetting to clean. But everything else felt off. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, and when I glanced over, I saw the family group chat had been active. The notification preview read, "Official engagement album is live." I didn't want to look, but I did. There were 12 photos, candids of Isolda and Calder laughing on a pier, toasts clinking, a panoramic shot of the reception hall dressed in sunset gold. One photo in particular stopped me cold. A group shot with nearly everyone from the bridal party, plus family, our mother, cousins, a few aunts. My uncle Silas, who rarely flew in for anything, was there. And me? Nowhere, not even in the background. No blurred shoulder, no side profile laugh. I zoomed in, stared at every face, every dress, every toothy smile arranged like it had been rehearsed. I scrolled to the comments. So beautiful. Perfect family. What a dream day. Not even a mistake anymore, just policy. I texted Mom. Me. I wasn't in the family photo. Was that intentional? Her response came 10 minutes later. It's just the main wedding party, sweetie. Don't overthink it. I set the phone down face first. Isolda never replied. She'd seen the message. Our phones had red receipts on. Blue ticks, silence. It wasn't about the photo, not really. It was about the decision behind it. The quiet, tidy choice to omit me from the memory. This wasn't an accident, it was a habit. And I was done pretending it wasn't. There's this quote I read once, Elizabeth Warren, I think. If you're not at the table, you're probably on the menu. That line hit differently now. I moved through my apartment like a ghost in my own home. Every room felt suddenly curated with silence. The walls didn't echo, they absorbed. I needed air. Digging through my nightstand drawer for the spare keys to my bike lock, I found an old jewelry box instead. Cheap velvet, fraying at the corners. I hadn't touched it in years. It still had the chain I wore to Dad's funeral, tucked beneath receipts and a broken earring. And beneath that, an envelope. My name was on it. His handwriting. I sat down cross-legged on the floor and opened it with the care of someone holding a memory too long. It was dated 5 years before he passed. Mariska, you've always been the one who sees everything. Not loud, not flashy, but necessary. You build things quietly. You keep things working when others stop noticing. Don't let them mistake your silence for weakness, and never let anyone silence your voice. I love you. Dad. I didn't cry. Not in the loud, cinematic way. Just sat there with the letter against my knees, breathing like the room might disappear if I didn't keep still. He saw me. Even when no one else did, he saw me. Later that afternoon, I sat at my small desk, opened my laptop, and clicked into a blank document. I didn't know what I was writing yet, but I had to start keeping track, not journaling, recording, witnessing, missing name on the invitation, seated with support staff, dress ordered in the wrong size, mistaken as catering, excluded from photos. One by one, I typed the patterns out, and when the list started to take shape, I added just one more line at the bottom. They are building a story without me, and it's time I stopped letting them. I got up and printed the group photo from my email. Full color, high resolution. I circled the empty space where I should have been standing, between Vera and Isolda. I used a red Sharpie, not to scream, just to mark that I saw what they were doing. I pinned it to the fridge, right next to the grocery list I hadn't touched in days. That night, I pulled out the binder I used for freelance clients and opened to a fresh section. Labeled it, Family Project. Then I opened a fresh document and started typing again. This time, it had a title, Version of Events, as I lived it. It wasn't the first time they left me out, but it might be the last. The next evening, I sat on my couch with a blanket across my lap, laptop humming, and the soft clink of ice in a half-empty glass of ginger ale beside me. The only light came from the screen and a dim lamp in the corner. It had been a quiet day, which made what happened next hit even harder. A new message from the wedding group chat popped up at the top of the screen. It looked like a normal update at first. Another floral arrangement update, maybe. But when I clicked it open, it wasn't from the coordinator or Vera. It was from Isolda. The message read, "Just hope she doesn't cry during the ceremony. It's embarrassing to have help pretending to be family." She sent it to the whole group, not just Leora, not Calder, not Mom. Everyone. My hand froze above the keyboard. There was a beat. No follow-up, no apology, no frantic delete. Just silence. Then Leora replied with a laughing emoji. I didn't answer. I didn't delete it. I took a screenshot, labeled it with the date, and saved it to a folder I'd created the week before called Receipts. Not because I wanted to use it, but because I finally accepted I might have to. The cold that spread through my chest wasn't anger. Not yet. It was recognition. That what I thought was subtle neglect had always been active dismissal. Intentional. Rehearsed. I wasn't overlooked. I was managed. About an hour later, just as I was reheating soup, my phone lit up again. A call. Calder. I didn't hesitate. I answered. Hey, he said, voice low, like he wasn't sure if he should be calling. You okay? I took a breath, kept my tone even. I will be. Listen, he continued. I saw the message. That wasn't a slip-up. That was who they are. His words came slower after that, like he was choosing each one. I've been watching this for a while now. I didn't know how to step in without making it worse. But, Mariska, they're not going to change. You know that, right? I said nothing, let the silence answer. I'm not calling to fix anything, he added. Just thought maybe you deserve to hear the truth without someone trying to pretty it up. It was the first time anyone had talked to me like that in years. Not with pity, not like I was fragile, but like I was clear-headed, competent, and in control of my own reactions. We agreed to meet the next day. Neutral ground, a quiet coffee shop he liked near his office. I said yes before I even processed it. After the call, I sat down and opened my laptop again. Instead of scrolling, I went to the Receipts folder and started organizing. Screenshots, voicemails, emails, wedding spreadsheets where I was listed as support lead instead of family. I wasn't building a case. I was making sure that if I ever had to say something out loud, I'd have something to back it up. They wouldn't be able to rewrite history with phrases like, "That's not what happened," or "You're being sensitive." I wasn't looking for revenge. I just wanted proof. So the next time they tried to paint me as difficult or dramatic, I wouldn't have to scream. I could just open a file. That night, as I returned home from a walk, I walked into the kitchen to see Isolde leaning against the counter, sipping tea like nothing had happened. I didn't say a word. I placed my phone on the table in front of her, screen up, message still open. She blinked at it, then looked up, a flash of guilt breaking through her usual poise. Just for a second. You weren't supposed to see that, she muttered, then gave a half laugh. But if the shoe fits... I didn't flinch. I just smiled, turned around, and walked upstairs. They think I'll go back to being quiet. That's their next mistake. Later that night, as I was brushing my teeth, a voice note auto-downloaded from the chat. It was Leora. The tone was casual, like she was talking to someone on speaker in her car. Honestly, if she walks away after all this, I won't even blame her, but that would ruin Isolda's entire image. I stared at my phone, toothbrush in hand. I hit save. titled the file, "The Truth Speaks When They Forget You're Listening." I didn't have to destroy them. I just had to let the world see who they really were. The rehearsal dinner was held at a wine bar uptown, the kind of place with exposed brick and too many Edison bulbs dangling like an overthought metaphor. Everyone was already buzzed on Chardonnay and the weight of rehearsed celebration. The air smelled like candle wax and pretense. I'd barely taken a sip of my water when Calder walked up behind me. "Hey," he said quietly. "You should say something tonight. Just a short toast. You've earned that much." I looked at him. His eyes didn't flinch. He meant it. Before I could answer, Isolda appeared out of nowhere, smile sharp as ever. "Let her say something quick," she said, with a tone that danced between permission and dismissal. "We're on a tight timeline." It was phrased like generosity. It felt like a trap. But I took the mic anyway. I stood near the bar, under those dim, golden lights, and watched the crowd. Familiar faces, half listening. A few whispered. One server slipped past me with a tray of mini crab cakes, the kind of detail Isolda would later insist made the night elevated but accessible. I cleared my throat, steady. "I know this isn't traditional," I began, "but I wanted to say something about family, and what it means when someone in the family chooses to stay quiet for too long." 3 sentences in, the mic went dead. No pop, no static, just silence. The DJ stepped in quickly, as if on cue. "We're a bit behind schedule, folks. Back to the music." Polite clapping followed. Hesitant, like everyone in the room had just swallowed something bitter and couldn't quite name the taste. I stood still, holding the mic like it might resurrect itself. Then I set it down slowly and walked back to my table. I didn't look at Isolda. I didn't need to. My mother leaned toward me with a tight-lipped smile. "Timing is everything, honey. You'll understand one day." It wasn't the first time I'd been muted, but it was the first time they did it with stage lighting and an audience. Later, at home, I thought back to the night before. I had stayed up until nearly 2 a.m. writing that speech, not to air dirty laundry or stir drama. It was thoughtful, honest, the kind of thing someone would write if they still believed this family could be something more than performative warmth and holiday group photos. I'd printed 2 copies, one for the MC. But that afternoon, when I came into the prep room to get my purse, I found Isolda hunched over my tote. She looked up, completely unfazed, and tossed something into the trash behind her. Later, I checked. 1 page of my speech, crumpled into a loose ball. When I confronted her, she laughed. "You really thought I'd let you change the mood with your therapy hour?" No apology, not even a pretense. Tonight made it clear. This wasn't just erasure, it was censorship. Precise. Choreographed. I didn't cry, didn't shout. Instead, I went back to my list. I began adding names of who smiled politely, who looked away, who avoided eye contact. Not for vengeance, for memory. Silencing me in public was their strategy, but I was done being strategic for their comfort. I realized something that night. It wasn't being excluded that hurt anymore. It was how long I had let myself believe silence was safety. As dessert was served, something overly sweet with a French name no one could pronounce, Calder leaned across the table toward me. "You still have the floor," he whispered. "Just not their mic." I didn't answer. My eyes scanned the room. Isolda was laughing with 2 cousins, hand-waving in animated confidence. But her eyes, those flicked toward me, then back, again and again, like someone waiting for a grenade to roll under the table. She knew, this time, she knew she went too far. The sun had barely cleared the treetops when I arrived at the venue for the final walkthrough. The air was thick with nerves and florals. White hydrangeas and freshly opened roses clashed with the smell of steam from the catering trucks. Inside the reception hall, staff buzzed from table to table, triple-checking charger plates and aligning silverware as if the wedding were a royal coronation. I was already dressed. My bridesmaid gown, steamed and hemmed, fit like armor. Soft in fabric, but sharpened in intention. I had tucked my hair behind one ear, pinned a thin chain necklace just under my collarbone, and kept my eyes open. "Mariska!" Isolda called from across the room, not looking up from her clipboard. "We've got a spill near the cake display. Could you grab a rag and handle it?" I paused. Before I could speak, Vera chimed in cheerfully, not missing a beat. "You're good with details, dear. Just like always." I looked at both of them, then down at the sequined sash stitched around my waist. I nodded once, just once, and walked toward the kitchen. There, I found a stack of linens and grabbed one. I crouched beside the cake stand and wiped. Leora appeared next to me moments later, holding a spray bottle like she was my superior on a cleaning crew. "Make sure you get the corners. Don't want the photographer catching a smear." Her smile was sweet, her eyes razor sharp. When I stood, she handed me the bottle and whispered, "God, you're reliable. Almost like you were born to do this." I didn't answer. My gaze landed on the room, on the guests arriving early, the planners with headsets, the way the other bridesmaids fluttered around Isolda while I handled cleaning tasks. I was a helper. I'd always been the helper. But something in my stomach twisted tighter this time, like the knot knew something I hadn't admitted yet. Then I heard it. "Honestly, she's not family. She's staff that we tolerate." It came from behind me. Isolda's voice, low but not low enough. She was talking to someone near the window. A bridesmaid? A cousin? I couldn't tell, but I heard it clearly. And then, louder, deliberate, for the whole room to hear. "You're just the help. Know your place." A hush fell so fast it might have shattered glass. I turned around slowly. She was still facing the other direction, but smiling, like she'd dropped a grenade and was waiting to hear it hit. No one said anything. No one stepped in. I straightened my back, set the bottle on the table next to me, walked past the cake, the rented chairs, the floral arch that now felt like a prop in someone else's lie. I walked straight into the supply room and closed the door behind me. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from something so old it felt fossilized. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. I opened the folder, screenshots of the text, voice notes, images, my story, already building itself into a quiet wall. I scrolled until I found the latest edition, the mic being cut at rehearsal dinner, frozen in video. I tapped save. This was never about one insult. This was about making sure I stayed small, but they just handed me the match. A knock at the door. Calder. He stepped in carefully, like he knew I was trying to hold myself together. "You okay?" he asked. I didn't answer. He glanced at the phone in my hand, then looked up. "You want to walk away, or walk through it with your head high?" I met his gaze. My voice didn't shake. "I'm not walking away anymore, but I'm done asking for a seat." It took me exactly 6 minutes to pull myself together. Back in the main hall, I moved with precision. I didn't look at Isolda. I didn't search for Vera. I walked to the corkboard where the seating assignments were displayed in thick cardstock. There it was. Event support, Mariska. I reached into my clutch, pulled out the red Sharpie I always kept for emergency corrections, and drew a clean line through support. Above it, in capital letters. Family. I stepped back. And from across the ballroom, Isolda looked up. Our eyes locked. Her mouth didn't move. But her face said everything. She didn't expect that. Cocktail hour was staged to perfection. Fairy lights strung like constellations over the manicured lawn. Champagne flutes already sweating in the summer air. The music was ambient enough to pretend joy, and most people were doing just that. Pretending. I moved through the guests quietly, offering smiles I didn't feel. Some returned them. Most didn't hold eye contact for long. A few gave polite nods like they were hoping I wouldn't sit near them. Isolda was radiant at the center of it all, voice chirpy, hair pinned like a news anchor's, greeting everyone like she hadn't spent the last week cutting me out of her life one decision at a time. Calder lingered on the edge of the crowd, drink in hand, eyes never leaving Isolda. But he glanced at me, once, long enough to register something wasn't sitting right with him either. Someone dropped a glass near the buffet. Instinct kicked in. I bent to help before anyone asked. My hands were steady. I moved fast, without fuss. I was good at this, being invisible, being useful. Isolda's voice sliced the air. Some people can't help but act like staff, even when dressed up. Laughter stuttered. A few people turned their heads sharply. A breeze pushed through the silence. Calder was standing 10 feet away. He didn't speak right away, just stared at her, then at me. His voice was calm when it finally came. "You deserve better than this." He set his glass on the nearest table, straightened his jacket, and walked out. No one followed him. Isolda blinked, laughed like she was trying to brush off a piece of lint on her reputation. "He's always dramatic," she said lightly, waving a hand. "He'll be back." But the cracks had already started to show. You could feel it, like tension bleeding from under a closed door. One of Calder's groomsmen, Alex, stepped forward. He didn't raise his glass to toast. He didn't smile. He just said, "That wasn't right. Everyone here knows it. We just pretend better than most." A beat. Then a few gasps. Someone coughed. One older aunt tried to change the subject, but it fell flat. Isolda stood frozen, lips parted in a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. I didn't move, didn't cry. I just stood there, feet planted, dress swaying slightly in the heat. The cracks were finally visible. And it wasn't me breaking this time. Isolda's image didn't shatter, yet. But the wobble was undeniable. She tried to shift the tone, laugh louder, pull people back into her gravity. Vera rushed over, whispering something and rubbing her arm like that would fix the growing distance. Across the lawn, Leora leaned in, hissed something into Isolda's ear. I didn't need to hear it. Isolda's jaw tightened. Her eyes flicked toward me, then away. Guests had started to glance at me differently, not warmly, but not with dismissal either. More like caution, curiosity, like they were finally starting to wonder what they'd been missing while they watched her shine. The photographer arrived, camera slung over one shoulder, checking angles. "Let's grab the family shots," he called cheerfully. "Right at the altar setup." Everyone shuffled toward the archway. I stayed behind. Isolda stood in her bridal gown, bouquet perfectly posed, arms folded. She glanced around. "Where's Calder?" someone asked. A groomsman checked his phone. His face changed. He looked up at me, then over to Isolda. "He's not coming back." The words landed like a dropped plate, loud but soft at the same time. And then everyone turned. Everyone was looking at me. My phone started buzzing at 6:43 that morning. I remember the exact time because it woke me. I was still in bed, the curtains half drawn, morning light barely stretching across the floor. I grabbed the phone without thinking, expecting a calendar alert or maybe a message from the florist about leftover centerpieces. Instead, it was chaos. Messages stacked on top of each other, texts, missed calls, links being sent by friends I hadn't spoken to in months. The top notification was a screenshot of a headline. "Groom walks out mid-wedding after sister-in-law called just the help." I blinked hard. The clip was already viral. A friend had texted it to me. "This is wild, but I am so proud of you." I clicked play. There I was, frozen mid-motion, in that awful silence after Isolda's comment. You could hear her voice, clear as day. Some people can't help but act like staff, even when dressed up. And Calder, standing like a statue, then turning, saying, "You deserve better than this," and walking out. The moment replayed over and over, already cut into TikTok audios, reaction reels, hashtagged into oblivion. They made me invisible. Now everyone sees. I sat in silence for 10 full minutes, watching comment threads unfold in real time. People were angry, not at me, at them. Shock and support tangled in a digital tide. A local news anchor mentioned the story on air that afternoon, without names. But it didn't matter. Everyone knew. The family group chat exploded sometime around 9 a.m. Vera, this is damaging. Please say something to take it down. I didn't respond. Let it damage. Let it rot from the inside out like it had been doing quietly for years. Only now the lights were on. Around noon, I got a message from Avon, an old college friend who had once been close with Leora. The text was short. You'll want to see this. She sent it to someone who thought it was funny. Attached was a Dropbox link. I hesitated, then clicked. It was a video. Low res, clearly recorded on a phone, but the voices were unmistakable. Leora. We only let her in to look good. The optics matter. Isoldas' team didn't want headlines about sibling drama. Someone off camera laughed. Leora continued. I mean, what's she gonna do? File a complaint about being included? I watched it twice, then downloaded it. An hour later, I posted it publicly with one caption. Since everyone's asking what happened, here's what they said when no one was supposed to hear. It spread faster than the first clip. By 3 p.m., Isoldas' brand deals started quietly disappearing. A boutique that had featured her bridal shoot deleted their posts. One vendor posted anonymously, "We weren't warned of possible PR risks." The shift was subtle but swift. Comments turned colder. Not just sympathy, accountability. People started digging, questioning her perfectly polished history. At 4:22 p.m., Vera called again. I let it ring. You don't get to erase me and still ask me to save you. By evening, the notifications had slowed, but the damage had deepened. The buzz wasn't just gossip anymore. It was momentum, a shift in narrative. People were watching. Then, just after 9 p.m., my voicemail lit up. Calder's voice, low and deliberate. I left for a reason, but I'm guessing you didn't know they planned to make you the redemption arc for press. He paused. There's a clause in the wedding PR contract that names you. I think you deserve to see it. My thumb hovered over the delete button, then pulled back. And just like that, I realized this wasn't personal. It was strategic. By the time the sun dipped behind the skyline, the quiet in my apartment felt deliberate. Not peaceful, strategic. Like the world was holding its breath, waiting to see what I'd do next. I was sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open, nursing the same cup of tea I'd reheated twice and never actually finished. My inbox pinged softly. It was an email from Calder. No subject line, just an attachment. I opened it without hesitation. It was the wedding's PR contract, 17 pages long, buried in brand collaboration clauses, press rollout strategies, and influencer contact lists. Legalese disguised as celebration. I scrolled. Fast at first, then slower when I reached page 12. Narrative value assets. My name was there. Full, bold, unmistakable. Younger sister included to enhance image of familial reconciliation and relatability. I read it 3 times before I understood it wasn't a mistake. It was branding. I wasn't just a guest. I was a prop. They didn't just use me emotionally. They monetized my silence. At 8:15 p.m., Vera called. As if she had the nerve to do it like nothing had shifted. Her tone was sweet, sickly. I just wanted to check in, she started. It's been a rough couple of days for all of us. All of us? I asked. She exhaled lightly, like I was being difficult. Mariska, if you love this family, you'll let this go. What's done is done, and we all have to move forward. You've made your point. I stayed silent. She continued softly, as if she thought saying it gently would dull the blade. At the end of the day, your sister is still your sister. I didn't raise my voice. And I'm still me, I said calmly, but you never let that be enough. Then I hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I opened a new tab and took a screenshot of that contract clause. Just one paragraph, clean, unedited. Then I opened my social media account and posted it with a caption. When someone tells you who they are, believe them. But when they write it down and sign it, it's time to stop pretending. I put my phone down. Poured a fresh cup of tea. Within 10 minutes, the comments started rolling in. Shock, disbelief, rage, and from many, validation. She's not a person to them. She's a press bullet point. Imagine doing this to your own sibling. I hope she sues. My favorite came from someone anonymous. They wrote the story, she just started reading it out loud. Exactly. I stayed offline for a while after posting it. Let the world do what it does best. Spread truth faster than anyone could control it. An hour later, a former co-worker of Isoldas commented on the post. I always wondered why she made her sister carry the weight while she smiled for the camera. Then the direct messages started. Not trolls, people I knew, family friends, vendors, old church acquaintances. Some said, I'm sorry I didn't speak up. Others said, we always saw it, but didn't think it was our place. But it was. It had always been. Around 10:30 p.m., Calder called again. His voice sounded different, more alert than calm. I'm getting emails from reporters now. Are you okay? I leaned back in my chair, staring at the contract still open on my screen. I'm fine, I said. For once, it's not me being erased. It's them being exposed. There was a pause on the line. Then another call came in. Unknown number. Calder must have seen the same thing, because he spoke before I could ask. Don't answer that, he said, voice tight. Not yet. I narrowed my eyes at the screen. It's probably her PR team, he added. My thumb hovered over the decline button. I didn't decline. I didn't accept. I just let it ring. I didn't sleep much after Calder's voicemail, not because I was upset, but because I finally saw the whole picture. Their picture. The one they'd been carefully cropping me out of while positioning me as a prop. At 7:13 a.m., I opened the folder where I'd kept every legal document related to my apartment. I hadn't looked at them in months, not since I paid off the last round of property taxes. I scanned the title transfer line again, and then I saw it. The signature didn't match mine. The date did match the week Isoldas' PR team was finalizing wedding logistics. I felt my chest tighten, not from panic, but clarity. They'd transferred ownership of my apartment to Isolda, quietly, legally, using a family consolidation clause from an old trust, something my parents had helped me set up years ago, something I was supposed to own outright. They didn't just erase me emotionally, they wrote me out of the assets. Calder confirmed what I was seeing. He texted back within minutes, attaching a copy of a public records link. You were moved out of title on April 14th, he wrote. Same week they finalized the guest list. They planned my erasure like an event layout. I opened a folder on my desktop and titled it The Full Truth. Inside it, I placed the scanned deed, the original email I had sent to my parents asking about the ownership, still unanswered, and the document showing the transfer date. I uploaded it all to a secure public link, and I posted one line on social media. They took my name, then my seat, then my space. I'm just taking back my story. I went for a walk around the block. By the time I returned, the post had already been shared hundreds of times. Former vendors began pulling out from their collaborations with Isolda. Quietly at first, disabling links, pulling her features off homepages. A bridal magazine sent a brief statement. We are reevaluating our upcoming editorial coverage. One podcast, popular among women over 40, dedicated an entire episode titled, How PR Weddings Destroy Real Families. The comment section underneath my post was what stuck with me the most. She didn't ask for revenge, she asked for recognition. This wasn't a meltdown, it was a memo. At 2:11 p.m., I received a text from Vera. You've humiliated us. I hope it was worth it. I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back. Not humiliation, documentation. That afternoon, Calder and I met at the coffee shop where this all started. The same spot he'd first said, they won't change. You will have to. He handed me a coffee, sat across from me like a war buddy after the dust had settled. You burned it down without screaming, he said, half impressed. Screaming makes it about emotion, I replied. I wanted this to be about evidence. We clinked paper cups and sipped in silence. There was no declaration between us. No need for it. Just shared survival. And something like mutual respect. The sun was setting when I got home. A glow hit the floor like closure. Then an email pinged. Subject line. For the record, from Isolda. I opened it. You could have talked to me, she wrote, but you always wanted an audience. No apology, no admission, just performance. Still playing the part, even as the stage crumbled beneath her. I sat still for a moment, reading the sentence twice. Even in silence, she never learned the difference between truth and performance. The sun hadn't fully climbed above the buildings yet, but the light in my kitchen was golden and still. The city outside felt paused, the way it does on early weekend mornings, when even the traffic seems to sleep in. I sat at the table with a pen in my hand, writing a letter I knew I'd never send. Not to Isolde, not to Vera, to myself, 5 years ago, to the girl who nodded too often, who thought staying quiet earned peace. Forgiveness isn't owed, I wrote slowly, especially when apologies are performances, especially when they're followed by requests to clean up the mess they never acknowledged. I paused, looked at my own handwriting. It didn't shake, it didn't hesitate. I folded the letter neatly and tucked it into the old binder, where I used to organize event timelines, weddings, retirement parties, family barbecues. That binder had held everyone else's joy for years. It could hold a single truth for me. Not long after, I powered on my laptop and opened the folder labeled Receipts. I didn't hesitate. One by one, I deleted the screenshots, the voicemails, the saved emails. I didn't need them anymore. Not because they didn't matter, but because I no longer needed proof to believe myself. I unsubscribed from the family group chat, removed my name from the shared holiday calendar. Then I exhaled. And for the first time in years, it didn't feel like I was waiting to be pulled back in. Around mid-morning, there was a knock at the door. I already knew who it was. Vera stood there in a pale green cardigan, holding her purse like a shield. I didn't call, she said softly. I just wanted to see you. I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, scanning the room like it might blame her. We sat at the kitchen table. Silence stretched long and thick. She didn't apologize. I didn't ask her to. I'm not asking you to forgive us, she finally said. I just wanted to see if you were okay. I looked at her, not with anger, not even with pity. I'm not angry anymore, I told her. But I'm not yours to manage anymore either. She nodded once, said nothing else, and left without asking for a hug. In the afternoon, a package arrived, the kind with a generic studio logo on the label. I opened it and found the wedding album. No note inside. Just the heavy book, its leather binding still cold from the mail truck. I flipped through each glossy page slowly. Isolde, radiant. Vera, composed. The venue, perfect. And not a single photo with me in it, not one. I closed the album, walked it to the bookshelf, placed it on the top shelf of a cabinet, and locked the door. Then I sat down with a cup of coffee and stared at the quiet for a while. That evening, just after sunset, Calder texted, "You don't owe anyone reconciliation. You gave yourself something better, respect." I replied with one word. Exactly. 15 minutes later, a new message came in. It was from a journalist with a national blog. Subject line, "Would you be willing to share your side?" I stared at the screen for a long moment. And I realized the story wasn't over, but this time I'd be the one to choose how it's told. The camera crew was smaller than I expected. Just a producer and one soft-spoken guy adjusting lighting with the care of someone arranging museum glass. The set was simple. 2 chairs, 1 plant, and a branded step and repeat behind us I didn't even glance at. We'd gone over the questions beforehand, but I knew they'd ask the one that mattered. Do you regret speaking up? and I didn't flinch when I answered. No, I wasn't the mistake in their story. I was the mirror they kept turning away from. I didn't cry. I didn't dramatize. I told the truth in plain language, the way people who've survived manipulation often do. You learn to strip your voice of decoration when it's been silenced too long. The interview lasted 28 minutes. It went live the next morning. By lunchtime, it had over 1.5 million views. People saw me, not just as a viral moment or the girl in the video clip, but as a whole person. I wasn't the sister. I wasn't the event planner. I was someone who had been left out, again and again, and had finally said, no more. Isoldas' pages were flooded. Some comments were furious. Some demanded explanations. Others were quieter. Questions posed like knives. If she wasn't lying, why hasn't your sister deleted the receipts? Funny how someone who builds a brand on grace has none for her own blood. An exposé dropped by an online magazine that afternoon. It outlined the entire narrative arc of PR-centric weddings, image-first ceremonies that silence women in favor of optics. A vendor, anonymous but clearly inside the process, was quoted saying, "Mariska was the only adult in that planning room, the only one who ever asked who was cleaning up the emotional mess." By evening, Isoldas' wedding photos were gone from every page, every hashtag. Her account went private. Then, dark. No apology ever came. Only a terse email from her lawyer. "We ask that you refrain from further mention of Ms. Montgomery in public or commercial materials." It didn't sting. It landed like another line in the pattern. The next day, I drove to the guest house, still vacant, the lawn half kept. The front door opened easily. Inside, it smelled faintly of paint and dust. I walked through slowly, letting my fingers graze the kitchen counter, the hallway trim I'd helped pick out. Every room looked like the blueprint of a future that wasn't mine. But I'd built it anyway. I opened one window, breathed in the clean spring air, and whispered, "This was mine." They just couldn't stand that. I left a letter on the windowsill, folded once, unsealed. Not a declaration, just a memory. Then I locked the door and didn't look back. Later that evening, Calder emailed. The subject line read, "A new kind of blueprint." He wrote, "A nonprofit I advise is launching a fund for young women erased from family systems. Would you help design the program?" I didn't hesitate. I've been waiting my whole life to give a voice to girls who stayed quiet too long. I clicked send and smiled. That same night, I posted one final update. It wasn't a diatribe, no hashtags, just one sentence. I didn't burn bridges, I built exits. And the next morning, I stepped into my new office. It wasn't grand, just 2 rooms and a coffee machine that sputtered like it had survived its own war. But it was mine. Clean, quiet, rooted in intention. I hung up a small frame above my desk. Inside was the first line from that letter I never sent. "Forgiveness isn't owed." I sat down, opened a fresh notebook, and began writing again. The shame never belonged to me, and I'm done carrying what isn't mine.